Welcome to English Podcast.
The podcast where we make learning English fun and easy. I'm Lisa and my co-host Eric, and we will be your guides on this language adventure.
Hi everyone! In each episode, we break down common English phrases and words, share example dialogues, and have friendly chats to help you improve your English.
So, grab a cup of tea, relax, and let's get chatting. Okay, Eric, what are the words today?
The first word today is confident. Then we will continue with familiar. And to pay attention to, then be aware of. The final one is to keep an eye on.
Okay, let's proceed with the first word, Eric.
Sure, Lisa. The first word today is confident.
Confident.
Confident is an adjective. Being confident means you believe in yourself. You think you can do things well or succeed. Its noun form is confidence.
Yes, Eric. If you are confident, you feel sure about your abilities or ideas. It's feeling good about what you can do.
For example, he walked into the interview feeling confident and prepared. Or, even though he was nervous, he spoke in a confident tone during his presentation.
Okay, these are great examples, Eric. Let's give an example. Imagine two friends, Mia and Leo, at a talent show.
Leo, your singing is wonderful. Are you ready for the talent show?
Thanks, Mia. I'm feeling pretty confident. I practiced a lot.
Yes, I agree. Leo, you should be confident because you worked hard. I'm sure everyone will love your song.
Nice example, Lisa. In the dialogue, Leo feels confident about his singing because he has practiced a lot.
Mia is also confident in Leo. She believes he will do well.
I agree. Lisa, do you think being confident is always good?
Good question, Eric. Being confident is usually good. But too much confidence might make someone miss mistakes. What do you think? Do you agree with me, Eric?
I completely agree. It's important to be confident, but also to listen and learn from others. Sometimes we can't see our own mistakes when we're too confident.
Yes, exactly, Eric. Also, people like it when someone is confident. It makes them feel sure and safe.
True, Lisa. And if someone is not confident, how can they become more confident?
Good question. Practicing is the key, and like Leo did, learning more and asking for help can also build confidence. What's another way, Eric?
Well, people can feel more confident when they set small goals and reach them. It shows them that they can succeed.
Oh, that's a really good point, Eric. Step by step, right?
Exactly, Lisa. Every little success increases confidence.
Well, folks, remember, being confident is about believing in yourself. Practice, learn, and set goals to increase your confidence.
Thank you for your great advice, Lisa. Let's move on to the next word. The next word we will be talking about is familiar.
Familiar.
Familiar. When something is familiar, it means you know it well because you have seen, heard, or experienced it a lot.
For example, the song on the radio sounded familiar to me. Or, isn't that our old math teacher? He looks familiar.
That's right, Lisa. They are perfect examples. If a place, a person, or a thing is familiar to you, it's not strange or new because you know it.
Let's give our listeners an example of dialogue. Imagine two friends, Tom and Jen, walking in their neighborhood.
This street looks so familiar. Didn't we have a picnic here last year?
Yes, you're right. That's why it's familiar to you. We came here for a picnic last year. It was a fun day.
It feels nice to walk somewhere familiar. Yeah, I remember all these houses.
Me too. It's comforting to be in a place that feels familiar.
That's a good example, Lisa. Tom and Jen found comfort in being somewhere familiar to them.
Exactly, Eric. They knew the place, and it brought back good memories.
Lisa, why do you think people like things that are familiar?
People like familiar things because they feel safe and comfortable. It's nice to know the people and places around us. What do you think, Eric?
I agree. Familiar things give us a sense of security. Being in a familiar place or with familiar people can make us feel happy.
Yes, and sometimes trying new things is good too. But it's always nice to have something familiar around.
Definitely, Lisa. Sometimes, even if something isn't familiar at first, when we experience it more, it will become more familiar to us.
Right, Eric. So, listeners, don't worry if something seems unfamiliar at first. With time and experience, it can become familiar and comfortable.
Exactly, Lisa. Let's look at our next word now. The next word is to pay attention to.
To pay attention to.
To pay attention to. It means that when you pay attention to something, you focus on it carefully. It means you're not thinking about other things around you. You're focusing on that one thing.
Like giving something our full concentration and not letting you think about anything else.
Absolutely. For example, when you're in class, it's important to pay attention to the teacher to understand the lesson.
Yes, that's a great example, Eric. And here's a sample dialogue to help our listeners understand better. Imagine a teacher, Mr. Adams, talking to his student, Lily, in class.
Lily, are you paying attention to the lesson?
Sorry, Mr. Adams. I was daydreaming. I'll pay more attention now.
It's important to pay attention in class. That way, you can learn and understand the material better.
I understand, Mr. Adams. I'm sorry about that. From now on, I'll focus on and pay attention to your lessons.
In this dialogue, Mr. Adams notices that Lily isn't focusing, so he reminds her to pay attention.
Exactly, Eric. Paying attention is important, especially in school, as Mr. Adams said. It helps us to learn and understand new things.
Lisa, why do you think paying attention can sometimes be hard?
Good question, Eric. Sometimes we find something else more interesting. But it's important to do something to pay attention. What helps you pay attention, Eric?
I find that taking notes helps me stay focused. It keeps my mind from wandering. And you, Lisa, how do you make sure to pay attention?
Removing distractions is key for me. I put my phone away and find a quiet place to concentrate better.
Those are great tips, Lisa. Being active in what we're doing, like taking notes or asking questions, can also make it easier to pay attention.
Absolutely, Eric. And remember, everyone, to pay attention is a skill. With practice, it can be better and help us in every aspect of life. Okay, is our next word be aware of, Eric?
Yes, Lisa. The next word is be aware of.
Be aware of.
Be aware of. If you are aware of something, it means you know about it, you understand or are aware that it is there.
Being aware of something can also mean you're paying attention to it because you think it's important.
For example, you should be aware of the traffic rules when driving. Or were you aware of the risks at the time?
Okay, let's look at an example of a dialogue. Imagine two students, Ben and Sarah, talking in the library.
Have you heard about the new study group for math?
No, I wasn't aware of it. When did they start it?
They started it last week. I'm aware of how tough math has been for us. So I thought it might help us.
That sounds great. Thanks for making me aware of it. I'll attend the next session.
In this dialogue, Sarah was not aware of the new study group until Ben told her about it.
Yes, and Ben was aware of Sarah's troubles with math, so he shared the information with her.
Lisa, why do you think being aware of things is important?
You make better decisions if you are aware of things around you. Like in our example, Sarah can now join the study group and get help. What do you think, Eric?
I agree, Lisa. Also, being aware can help us to be more understanding and helpful to others, like Ben was to Sarah. Can people become better at being aware of things?
Good question, Eric. Yes, people can improve by paying more attention to what's happening around them and asking questions. Getting more information makes us more aware. How about you, Eric? Do you have tips on how to be more aware?
I think listening carefully and not judging right away is very helpful. If we pay attention to what is happening around us, we can become more aware of our surroundings. So we can be more aware of what people might need or feel.
That's a great answer, Eric. Being aware of things not only helps us, but it can also improve other people's lives.
It's true, Lisa. And remember, being aware of different things can make life easier and more interesting.
Thanks for listening to our explanation and example of aware of. We hope you are now more aware of how to use this phrase. Okay, what is our last word today, Eric?
The last word today is to keep an eye on.
To keep an eye on?
To keep an eye on. It means to watch someone or something carefully. You make sure that they are safe. Or you do this to make sure everything is okay or nothing bad happens. That's a handy phrase we use when we want to watch or control something closely.
It's not just with your eyes, but also making sure you are aware of what's happening with that thing or person.
Yes, Lisa. For example, I need to keep an eye on my finances to make sure I don't spend too much. Or, please keep an eye on my bag while I go to the restroom.
Let's use an example dialogue so that our listeners can understand better. Imagine Paul is talking to his neighbor, Mrs. Green, about her cat.
Mrs. Green, I noticed your cat loves to play outside a lot.
Yes, he does. But I always make sure to keep an eye on him so he doesn't wander off too far.
That's good. I'll also keep an eye on him when I'm out in the garden. We don't want him to get lost.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate your help.
In this dialogue, Mrs. Green is watching her cat closely to make sure he's safe, and Paul offers to help watch the cat too.
Yes, and they both want to be sure the cat is safe and secure by keeping an eye on him.
Lisa, why do you think it's important to keep an eye on something or someone?
Keeping an eye on something can prevent accidents or problems. It's about caring and being responsible. What about you, Eric? Can you think of a time when you had to keep an eye on something?
Oh yes, when I babysit my little cousin, I have to keep an eye on him all the time. Kids are curious and can get into trouble easily.
That's a great example, Eric. It shows how keeping an eye on someone helps keep them safe.
And it's not just about watching, but being ready to act if something goes wrong.
True. It's about being proactive and attentive. So everyone remembers that to keep an eye on is to watch over carefully.
Thanks for joining us to learn about to keep an eye on. We hope you enjoyed our examples and discussion.
Before we sign off, we want to remind you to keep practicing these words and phrases we've discussed today. The more you use them, the more natural they'll become in your everyday conversations.
That's right, Lisa. And if you have any questions or suggestions for future episodes, feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you.
So until next time, keep learning, keep practicing, and keep listening to Simply Explained English with Lisa and Eric. Bye for now.
Take care, everyone.
I am Lisa.
And I am Eric. Hey, everyone. We're here to make English simple and fun for you.
Today we'll be talking about some words you hear a lot.
So, sit tight, relax, and let's dive into our words together.
Okay, Eric, what are the words today?
The first word today is silly. Then we will continue with embarrassed and to complain. Then, in addition to. And the final one is to pass away.
Okay, let's move on to our first word, Eric.
The first word is silly.
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 Silly means foolish, playful, or not serious. For example, the children were acting silly during the birthday party.
Another example could be, don't worry about making silly mistakes. Everyone does it sometimes.
Those are great examples, Eric. Now let's have a sample dialogue using the word silly.
Did you see the comedian's silly face when he told that joke?
Yes, it was so silly that I couldn't stop laughing.
I love how comedians can be so silly on stage and make everyone laugh.
Me too. Being silly is a great way to entertain people and have fun.
That's a useful dialogue, Amber. It shows how being silly can be a good thing, especially in entertainment.
Definitely. So, Eric, do you think it's important to be silly sometimes?
Absolutely. Being silly can help us relax, laugh, and not take ourselves too seriously.
I agree. Do you have any examples of when you've been silly?
Oh, sure. Sometimes I like to make silly faces at my little sister to make her laugh. It's our silly way of bonding.
That's so sweet. It's great to have silly moments with family and friends.
Definitely. But do you think there are times when being silly might not be proper?
Yes, I think it's important to know when we should be silly and when we should be serious. Like, you wouldn't want to be silly during a job interview or a serious conversation.
That's a good point, Amber. It's all about finding the right balance and knowing your audience.
Exactly. Well, I think we've covered the word silly quite well. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Eric?
Just a reminder to our listeners that being silly is a great way to bring joy and laughter into your life. Don't be afraid to embrace your silly side when the time is right.
That's wonderful advice. And with that, we wrap up our discussion on the word silly. Okay, now let's move on to our next word. What's the next word, Eric?
The next word is embarrassed. It's a feeling you get when you're uncomfortable or shy because of something that happened. It's like when you make a mistake in front of others and feel a little stupid or bad.
We've all had that feeling, Eric, don't we? Can you give us 2 sentences using embarrassed?
Sure, Lisa. For example, he was embarrassed to admit that he had forgotten his friend's birthday. And the second, she felt embarrassed after calling her teacher mom by accident.
Great examples, Eric. Now, let's hear an example dialogue using embarrassed. Jake and Lily are at a school talent show.
Lily, are you ready for our performance?
I'm a bit embarrassed about singing in front of everyone.
Don't worry, I was embarrassed too. But we practiced a lot. We'll be fine.
Thanks, Jake. I'll try not to be too embarrassed.
In this dialogue, Lily feels embarrassed about performing, but Jake makes her feel better. It's normal to feel embarrassed sometimes, especially when trying new things.
I agree. Amber, have you ever been embarrassed, but then felt better after doing something?
Yes, I was embarrassed to speak in Spanish at first. But after I started practicing, I became more confident. What about you, Eric?
Oh, sure. One time, I accidentally called my teacher Mom in front of the whole class. I was so embarrassed.
Oh no, that must have been tough. How did you handle it?
Well, I just laughed and apologized. I realized that everyone makes mistakes and feels embarrassed sometimes.
That's a great way to handle it when you are embarrassed. Do you think there are ways to avoid feeling embarrassed?
I think being prepared and practicing can help, like in the case of the talent show. But sometimes you can feel embarrassed unexpectedly.
That's true. I think it's important to remember that feeling embarrassed is normal and that it passes with time.
Absolutely. It also helps to have supportive friends who can encourage you, as Jake did for Lily in the dialogue.
Agreed. Well, I think we've covered the word embarrassed quite well. Will you have anything else you'd like to add, Eric?
Just a reminder to our listeners that everyone feels embarrassed sometimes, and that's okay. If you feel embarrassed, don't let it stop you from being yourself and trying new things.
That's great advice. Thank you for it, Eric. Let's move on to the next word.
The next word is to complain.
To complain.
To complain. To complain means to say that you are unhappy or annoyed with something. For example, lots of people have complained about the noise.
Another example could be, if the service was so bad, why didn't you complain to the manager? Or, you're always complaining.
These are good examples. Now, let's have a sample dialogue using the word to complain. We will listen to someone complaining about a problem in a hotel.
Excuse me, I'd like to complain about the noise in my room last night.
I apologize for the inconvenience. Can you please tell me more about the issue?
The people in the room next to mine were very loud, and I want to complain about it.
I understand your frustration. We'll look into the matter and see what we can do to solve your complaint. Thank you for bringing this to our attention.
That's a realistic dialogue, Amber. It shows how people might complain in a real-life situation.
Definitely. So, Eric, do you think it's okay to complain sometimes?
Yes, I think. It's important to express your concerns or unhappiness when it's true. Complaining some problems can help make things better.
I agree. But do you think there's a right way and a wrong way to complain?
Absolutely. I think it's best to complain politely and calmly, and people should focus on the problem rather than the person.
That's a great point, Eric. Complaining respectfully can bring positive changes.
Yes, Amber. And do you think some people complain too much?
Yes, they do sometimes. I think complaining continually can be negative and useless. You might not get anything other than stress.
That's so true. Focusing on helping to solve problems in a proper way is the best thing to do.
Yeah, Eric. Before continuing, just reminders to our listeners that it's okay to complain when necessary, but it's also important to do so respectfully and to find a balance with positivity.
Agreed? That's excellent advice. Now we will be explaining the next word. The next word is in addition to.
In addition to.
In addition to. This phrase is used when you want to talk about something extra or more. It's like saying also or as well as.
That's a useful phrase. Can you give us 2 sentences using in addition to?
Sure, Lisa. Here's the first one. In addition to playing the guitar, he also knows how to play the piano. And the second one, she bought a coffee, and in addition, she got a cake.
Those sentences really show how in addition to is used. Now, let's have an example dialogue. Carlos and Maria are at a bookstore.
Maria, I'm getting this novel, and in addition to this, I think I'll grab this travel guide.
That's a good idea, Carlos. In addition to those books, do you want to look at the magazines?
Yes, let's do that. I love looking at the latest issues, in addition to reading.
Me too. In addition to the articles, the pictures are amazing.
In this dialogue, Carlos and Maria use in addition to talk about buying and doing more than one thing at the bookstore.
It's a great way to include more details. Amber, in addition to hosting this podcast, what else do you enjoy doing?
Well, Eric, in addition to this podcast, I love hiking and photography. What about you?
In addition to being here with you, I'm a big fan of cooking and trying new recipes.
Haha, that's a wonderful chat, Eric. I liked it very much. Listeners, remember that in addition to helps you add more information to your conversations.
We hope you add lots of new words to your vocabulary today. In addition to.
Wow, it was a fantastic example.
Thank you, Lisa. In addition to listening to our podcast, don't forget to study English.
This was also very nice, Eric.
Thanks again, Lisa. Okay, let's explain our last word. Our last word today is pass away.
Pass away.
Pass away. It's a polite and gentle way to say that someone has died. We use it to show respect and sensitivity when talking about death.
For example, my grandfather passed away last year.
Or, we need to attend the funeral of our colleague who passed away unexpectedly.
Let's set up a scenario with 2 characters, Emily and Josh, who are old friends, catching up after many years.
Josh, have you heard anything about Mr. Thomas, our old music teacher?
Sadly, I heard he passed away a few months ago. He was a great teacher.
Oh, that's heartbreaking. I wasn't aware he had passed away. He indeed was an inspiring person.
In this dialogue, Emily and Josh are remembering their teacher who passed away.
It shows how people can respectfully talk about someone who has passed away, remembering the good things they've done.
Amber, why do you think people prefer to use pass away instead of die?
Well, Eric, I think it's because pass away sounds kinder. It can be better for people to hear and say when they're sad.
That makes sense, Amber. It's about showing care and respect for others' feelings during a difficult time.
Exactly. Talking about the positive things that a person who passed away is a comforting way of dealing with this kind of sad news.
It's true, Amber. Speaking well about those who have passed away helps keep their memory alive.
So friends, remember that pass away is a kind of phrase we use when talking about death. It helps express sympathy and respect during sensitive times.
Okay, folks. Unfortunately, we have reached to the end of our podcast again. Thank you for joining us today on Simply Explained English.
We hope you've enjoyed learning new words and phrases with us. Remember to practice, stay curious, and keep improving your English. Until next time, take care and keep studying English.
Goodbye, and in addition to listening, don't forget to study the vocabulary you have learned today.
Bye-bye.